really multiple departments in one. Whereas maybe in many other countries you would have a separate sociology department, you have a separate political science department, international relations, maybe even public policy. They're all together here.
I'm trained a political scientist. When entering room with sociologists, there are things that I assume is given that they would always challenge me on. That has required me to go back, read more, and sharpen my argument to also be able to defend my argument from that position.
This sense of community for me will become more and more necessary, which is what I really love about this place. Just be with a cohort. It's not this like lonely PhD experience that I heard a lot about before.
Probably the uniquely identifying feature of the Department of Political and Social Sciences at the EUI that we are members of is what makes the EUI also unique, which is it brings in people from all over Europe. They spend some time here, either as professor or as PhD student or as Max Weber fellows, postdoc, or perhaps visiting fellow, and interact, and then we go about our own ways again. There are not permanent professor positions here. PhD students spend only 4 years here. So there's a very dynamic thing, but it is a very integrating process because you've kind of this blender that takes in ingredients and then ejects them, and then people's life courses get moved in a different direction. And I think this dynamic produces, an integrative force. In the process, I think an European identity is created. And so you're at a particular stage of this dynamic relatively early. I'm at a somewhat later stage. I'm curious how you experience that dynamic. So maybe starting with you, Louise.
I think it also links quite well to what I'm researching and why I'm here researching that. So I kind of start from this tension between, on one side, increasing polarization around national identity in Europe, as we see in debates around migration, for example, and on the other side, Europe and democracies in Europe kind of proclaiming this idea of equality and inclusiveness, and racism being kind of something from the past, let's say. So I'm starting from this tension to try to understand how European democracies kind of evolve, taking a very specific case, but still asking these kind of questions, I feel, around the evolution of Europe, and who belongs when we say this big we, the nation. So maybe that's how I would see the link.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So what I'm hearing is that the system that I was just describing is, that's also the subject matter of the dissertations themselves. So there's a meta aspect to all of this. And indeed, so our own identities are interlinked with the very phenomena that you're studying. Very interesting. So how about you, Cathrine?
I guess it shows up differently in my work. I study how political influence has to be rethought and reshaped when it functions in digital environments. And for me, the interdisciplinary nature of the EUI helps study this concept because you really have to rethink it. So it's a study object that requires you to think qualitatively about it. Computationally, you need computational methods. You also need to classical theories of political influence. So I really benefit from being in this environment where if you go to one room and state an argument, it will be challenged on that people don't buy the premises of it. If you go to another room, they would challenge it, maybe buying the premises, but more from within. So you really get this tension academically that I think my work really benefits from because it's studying a really interdisciplinary subject. So I really have tried in my research to sort of leverage this while being at DOI, like taking hardcore theory courses or like IR courses and super quantitative network analysis courses. So to me, this tension really helps me think about my research in a way that I need to understand the thing that I'm trying to understand.
That's great. I think indeed you're getting at a second aspect that I think identifies the SPS department, which is that it's really multiple departments in one.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe in In many other countries, you would have a separate sociology department, you have a separate political science department, international relations, maybe even public policy. They're all together here, and the professors also have overlapping expertises. And then indeed, as you allude to, there's also the methodological breadth at the department, interest in theory, qualitative methods, quantitative methods, causal inference. And that all come together. And so I think for PhD students, this means indeed you move from one room to another, and a different kind of aspect of your dissertation research gets highlighted and reinforced and strengthened.
Also just things you just assume, like, we all agree on this, and then we can move on and start. And then you would go into a room and they would be like, well, why? Mm-hmm. And then you're confronted with having to justify, like when I'm trained a political scientist, so sometimes when entering a room with sociologists, there are things that I assume is given that they would always challenge me on, that has required me to go back, read more, and sharpen my argument to also be able to answer those questions or defend my argument from that position, which I think is really unique about the EUI.
Yeah, no, I fully relate to that. So I'm in my first year also, so I've been really in this process of refining my topic and being pushed to think about it in very different ways, and I think it's super valuable. I really see the benefits for my research, as I kind of arrived with a fixed idea of what I wanted to do and which methodology I wanted to use, and then I was kind of pushed to take different courses, so as you said, more like theoretical and then more methodological. And for me this really, again pushed me to think about it in different ways and to kind of make my argument also stronger and to find new ways to study the same topics, new perspectives, and just make the research more rigorous in a way also. So I really see the benefit of that. I also come from a very qualitative background, and here I was also introduced to quantitative methods, and I really see how it shaped kind of also my way of framing my research design and making it, I hope, more strong also in a way. So
I think I saw you present your work, and I think it's also says a little bit about the EUI, that you have a really qualitative, a really cool project, and then it's Valentina who's decided to supervise it, who does experiments, but on the same topic. So you agree on studying the same phenomena, but there's like a sort of acceptance of interdisciplinarity to an extent where she feels comfortable seeing you through, and there will be people that I just find it incredible that you don't have to necessarily work exactly similar to your supervisor, that this project probably is going to develop into something really cool because you come with a little bit different perspectives in like you two together developing where this project is going.
No, yeah, totally. I really see how we kind of complement each other, and she brings me very new ideas, and for example I'm now thinking of including vignette experiments in the interviews that I was planning, so it's really about thinking together with our different backgrounds, how to make it more rich and rigorous. So yeah, that's
AI. I imagine that a couple of years from now, you could imagine a world in which we look back and say they were talking about, 50 years of SBS and professors, following other professors, and they were at the cusp or the eve of a complete transformation of how science is done. Or maybe we'll all laugh and look back and say, oh, everybody had drunk the Kool-Aid on AI. And it turned out that it ended up just something like a calculator, it helped you do, or statistics software, it helps you do something faster. So you could concentrate on something else. But the humans are still going to be in charge of doing the science. I think it's an exciting moment, but also a little bit of a terrifying moment to be at. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about the future of the SPS department in light of these sweeping changes that are going on in the world, technology and politics.
Well, I think for me it actually gives me hope when looking at what is happening outside in the world. and then coming here and seeing all these people working on the future and trying to do something about it, kind of, it makes me quite hopeful, I would say. And yeah, again, this sense of community for me will become more and more necessary to kind of keep up and be together in this, I would say. Which is what I really love about this place also, is just be with a cohort. It's not this like lonely PhD experience that I heard a lot about before. And so yeah, I would say for me, when thinking about the future, I would just feel try to stay with this feeling of community here and be positive about what we can do at a very small scale.
That's great. How about you, Cathrine?
We are trying to understand, envision a world like this is how it is, how could it be different, or we can understand until here, but we cannot understand the next step. And because that is the core task of research, I'm not so worried, like, because an AI is trained on what was there before, which is similar to a researcher, but I still believe that there's something to gain from having this, like, being able to think critically about the relevant question to ask in the future. I still believe that that's a core task.
And maybe not only what might happen, but also having hope and ambitions about what we want Europe to look like in the future.
Yeah.
And there's a role for the ethics of AI to play, and like what some of your peers are studying. You know, this question of autonomous weapons.
Yeah.
And what will journals look like in the future? Are they edited by AI? Are they reviewed by AI? Are the articles written by AI? Or will we simply become managers of otherwise relatively autonomous agents doing research? Or I think these are some of the big questions, but we can steer it. Right? We don't have to be observers of it only.
No.
But we can shape the direction of some of these trends.
And I guess like that's my research is studying like digital spaces, digital technologies, etc. It's also, I believe that it's like regulation plays a key role, and that regulation has to be informed by actually research about how do these technology works, how like Frederick's work on automated weapons, like how do you think about regulating war when there's no longer a person doing the war? Like how do you ascribe liability? Who's liable? Is it the platform? Is it the people building the code? Is it the person sending out the drone? Like to understand questions like that requires like some more deep theoretical thinking where you take a step back and rethink the whole system. So I don't know. I find it very interesting, and I do not believe that this is about to be stolen by an AI. But I do believe that it must be regulated.
You, Louise, helped us with constructing a genealogy of the SPS department. I have here a big stack of papers where I printed all of these life courses that you've helped identify. So, I mean, these are individuals that were once in your shoes, and they were at this early stage. I had no idea what was going to happen next, and you've, in the process of helping us put this together, you've looked at all these biographies and maybe thought about, you know, what your impact or life course could look like, and maybe reflect on the purpose of doing a PhD here.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting as a research to do, also to kind of see the evolution in a very, again, rapidly changing world. I feel it's interesting to see how over 50 years it really evolved in terms of the topics that were studied here, the focus that are put, for example, in sociology. I think we can really see how it kind of kept adapting to the world and shifting from this very macro approach to research in sociology to a more interactional, and seeing how institutions shape the individuals and kind of create a loop. So yeah, it's super inspiring, and then it also gave me kind of an overview of what people do after. And yeah, it's super inspiring for me, again, being a first year, kind of to look like forward and think about what I could do after. And And since I research education, I think my ideal career would be to kind of transmit and kind of apply the things I'm researching, since I'm also interested in pedagogy. And it reflects very well, I think, the many academic careers that were, I think it's the most dominant career after being at the SPS department. So yeah, very inspiring.
Yeah, I think there's like 300, 400 professor careers here, and we were not able to identify everybody online in terms of the career, the traces that they've left behind digitally, but we've identified a lot of them, and there's a lot of professor careers, but there's also a lot of people who end up having very senior positions at think tanks or at the European Commission. So I think, more broadly, I think the EY is kind of an engine of producing the intellectual forces, both by producing professors, but also by producing high-level thinkers in these important institutions across Europe. Cathrine, so in front of you is a book, States and Markets by Susan Strange.
Yeah.
You want to tell us why it's there?
No, because I was thinking about these live courses, and it's just a fun little anecdote. So what inspires my work a lot is Susan Strange thinking about information in like moving to an information system, and she was a professor at the UI at the same time as my supervisor Simon Hicks was doing his PhD, and Thomas was working in the library, and so it's actually Thomas from the library who led me to this book that now I'm writing up my introduction, and it really, like, there's like a quote in this book, I'm not going to find it, but it really shapes my thinking, like what is it that I'm doing, how am I doing it? It's really, really inspired by her book, and I think it's interesting that there can still be a legacy in an institution that is so shifting all the time.
A legacy also because this then is the dissertation of your co-supervisor, Simon Hicks, who studied with Susan Strange.
But another thing that I was thinking about when you were mentioning all these live courses, it's interesting, when you study like trajectories and stuff, an institution, you would often think that institution shapes the people that are there, but also because people tend to stay there, so there'd be like an identity of the UI that is more constant over time. But it's interesting that you can still have an identity of the UI, because when you go to conferences and you mention that you're from the UI, people still have this, I've been there, yet the core ideas that shape the UI are constantly shifting, which I find like an interesting like duality.
Yeah, I think indeed what was mentioned before by Louise, I mean, if you look at a lot of older careers, I mean, you see people become law professor. Right? This is not something that I think a lot of our PhD students would be able to become now, but and even or professors of political theory. Yeah. And I think we moved indeed much more to also because of the availability of data, right, to more micro approaches, because you have all this data on individual lives. We're also talking about individual lives now. So I think part of the data availability also generates academic interest across everywhere, not just at the UI. And so some of these shifts are driven by developments in technology, in politics. And I think that both of you are studying at the individual level, right? You're looking at political influence. You are looking at discrimination as an individual experience. And perhaps 30 years ago, if you'd been here studying these same topics, you would take much more of a macro lens. Like
your work is like, there's a clear topic in everything that you work on. But I was thinking, like, what made you choose the UI originally? Because I guess there's like this choice between working very closely with a lot of people that study this, like where there's like a cluster of expertise on your particular topic, whereas the EUI, it's more interdisciplinary. But at your level and your stage in the career, what made you choose a department like this?
I mean, life courses go the way they are. I'm married to a career woman. Yeah. We need to find places where we both live together. This is the reality. Yeah. We raised 3 children here in Florence. They speak 3 languages, so there's another aspect of the UI. Is this, there's also layers on top of these trajectories that also become internationalized. And who knows, maybe my children are more European than they otherwise would have been. In my work, I'm a generalist, I guess. It's based on the principles, not based on a topic. So I'm interested in self-reinforcing processes, but I see them everywhere. I see them in politics. I see them in increasing concentration of wealth. I see them in political influence. So I guess my interests are perfectly aligned with the SPS department because I get to talk about what I'm interested in, but in all these different contexts. And whereas in the traditional department, I guess there would only be one way or two ways of looking at that same phenomenon. So I think this is, at least explains why I've had a great time here.
Yeah.